Yeah, so I'm out here again. Best place to be, out in the bush. Good for the soul, good for the mind, good for everything. Um, so today I wasn't going to do a video, but I am in an area that has a ton of white pine. And given all the interesting respiratory issues going around right now, I thought white pine would be a really cool thing to talk about, as it is good for the upper respiratory system. Good for helping you expectorate things, whether it's a dry cough or a wet cough. And we had a big windstorm yesterday. So it's the perfect time to do a little bit of harvesting in a very, very sustainable way. So first of all, white pine. This is a white pine. Um, they're fluffy. They're needles. Their needles are really fluffy. There are some red pines around here now. We'll show you those guys a little bit later, but how to identify them. They've got these really soft little needles here. The red pine, you'll notice a bit later, they're a little stiffer. They're a little harder, a little thicker needles. They don't look quite the same. And I don't see any red pine around here. These guys are all white pine that we've got hanging out here. They're a little bit yellowy. There's one over there that's a little bit greener. So obviously the greener, the more chlorophyll they would have in their needles. They're really high in vitamin C as well, so another good thing for the immune system. And one of the other ways you can tell a white pine from a red pine is to look at their bark. For the most part, unless they're really old, the white pine you'll see has really nice smooth bark. Really nice smooth bark. So it's enough about identification. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But as I said, we have just come off of a bit of a windstorm. So it's a perfect time to do a little bit of foraging around the base of the trees. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to come in here. A little bear bell jingling there. So you'll notice we've got some little branches down on the forest floor. And these guys would be some of the best ones to pick up because it's not harming the tree in any way. It's already lost it. This is a nice little chunk. This is one of the end bits too, and if you look inside there, you'll see some little buds happening, which I'll do a little video about harvesting evergreen buds later on as well. So yeah, quite a few little branchy things here. This one I had picked up earlier, and I just want to show you. You'll notice there's a little bit of like a cobwebby, nesty thing in there. You want to look out for stuff like that when you're harvesting from the wild. Like, you don't necessarily want to eat bugs. I don't know that it would, necessarily be of detrimental harm to you. I'm sure we eat a couple here and there anyway. But just, it's a good idea to check what it is you're picking up, especially if it's off the ground. Make sure you're not picking it up out of a big pile of, I don't know, rabbit poo or something like that as well. So anyway, I'm going to do a little bit of harvesting here. Okay, so here we have a good spot for some identification work. Now, as you're looking at it, you're probably like, well, it's just a bunch of evergreens. We have two different types of evergreens here. We've got our red pine and our white pine. So the white pine, the one I was talking about before, let's get in a little closer here. See, nice, soft, kind of little needles, and I mean, you can count numbers and stuff like that as well, but I'm sharing with you the things that stand out for me when I'm out in the forest looking at different trees. So this is our white pine. Again, soft, really soft, kind of bendy. It's nice, floofy. And then next door, we've got Mr. Red Pine. So these needles are quite a bit thicker, much bigger. And on this tree especially, they're a lot more plentiful. They kind of go the whole entire length. See how big that is? More like a porcupine, I guess. Now again, the bark is something else you can look at. So we have the white pine here in the foreground. which is really nice and smooth. And you'll notice in the background, we've got Mr. Red Pine back here. White pine, red pine. Little white pine in the foreground, and Mr. Red Pine in the background. So those are the two main things I look for when I'm looking to differentiate. Now again, there are other evergreens out there. There's spruce, which I'll be talking about a bit later, and they look quite a bit different than pine. There's jack pine, which again kind of looks like a spruce, just, you know, to confuse the issue. But there are definitely things that you can look at to help you tell the difference. And once they start to bud as well, that makes a big difference into how you can tell the species apart. Anyhow, yeah, red pine, white pine. Go for the white pine. So here's an example of an older, or let's say more mature, white pine. And you can see it does have kind of scales on its bark. It does start to split. But as you look at its branches, they're still relatively smooth. And as you go up the trunk, it gets smoother and smoother. And there's a good example of another red pine over here. And you can see how its bark is much different. And even on its little branches, the branches are still fairly scaly with its bark. Hope that's in focus. Nope. There we go. Now here we have a sustainable jackpot. That's a rather large branch that has come off of this mature, little bit cracked bark white pine. Hope you can see that with all the light in behind it. Yeah, that's better. So white pine for sure, because I can see those nice smooth branches and the fluffier kind of needles. And sitting right beside it, happy for me to show you things, this is a red pine bit. And we do have some red pines right beside it. There it is with all that cracked. But see, even here, it's a very scaly sort of looking branch. Whereas these branches on the white pine, very, very smooth. So I am definitely thankful for this bounty. This will make a good amount of tea for a good long time. I'm not going to take all of it. It's still good to even leave some of the down stuff behind, because that puts nutrients back into the soil so this big girl can keep on doing her thing. Anyway, thank you, Mother Nature. That is a fantastic gift. And once again, my buddy, Labrador tea. I was sitting on top of the rock and looking down at this, and it's like I knew. I could feel it. I could feel that he was there. Come on, focus. Oh. There he is. Under this little rock here as well. And then there's that other guy. This guy isn't good. I don't remember his name, but when I do my Labrador tea video, I will tell you. There's some right over there, but not those guys. And how I could see that, or feel that, or tell that from way up there on that rock, I cannot tell you. But I knew he was here. And there I am standing with him. So again, that kind of orange underneath. Orange. Those other guys, no orange, no orange. There he is. No orange. Anyway, yeah, I'll talk about that at another time. Labrador tea, in the midst of all this. And as luck would have it, an example of a jack pine, a couple examples. Now, these guys are kind of like a cross between a pine tree and a spruce tree. They have shorter needles for sure, as you can see, but the way pine trees kind of poof out, and you notice most of their little needles are turned up towards the sun, similar to that white pine in the background there. Whereas spruce comes straight out. I wish there was an example of a spruce right here. Maybe I'll give you another example from that last video. Anyway, yeah, jack pines are a little different. I don't know much about them other than there's lots of them around, just not in this particular area. Not sure. I think you can still, I'll have to look into that one as to what you can do with these guys. I think they are medicinal as well. Likely some good vitamin C. Anyway, yeah, we had a couple conifers back here. And then here, luckily, we have an example of a spruce tree with a big stick in the way. But the spruce tree, you'll notice it's kind of covered in needles all over the place. It doesn't have great big tufts. They're very short needles compared to the longer needles on the red pines, which you can see in the background there. They're kind of tufty. These guys have needles all the way up and down. Spruce needles are also very high in vitamin C. And I will be doing another video on spruce tips as well. I love spruce tips. Make a lot of cool things with spruce tips. But yeah, much different. Smaller needles all over the whole entire tree pretty well. Not so much into the center branches like any evergreen. But hopefully you can see the difference there. Spruce, red pine, white pine. And here we have some final product. This is just a straight up tea that I made with the needles and the stems, the twigs. The twigs have a whole lot of really nice sap in it. The pitch, the pine gum kind of thing. Very flavorful, very sticky. My hands were very, very sticky after going through some of the white pine. Just give me a second here. I know. I'll show you the different parts that I used for some of my different concoctions there. So here we have our little white pine. And when I was making these salts, I was using just the needles. When I was making the syrup, I was cutting up the needles and the little stems, the little twigs there. When I make my tea, I do the same. The stems, the twigs, as well as the needles. Very flavorful. Smells nice. So there we are, a little white pine. The syrup that I made, I did not reduce it very much, so it's not very, very thick. If it is a little thicker, you can use it on things like ice cream. Little pine needle ice cream would be tasty. You can do a lot of different things with it. What I've been enjoying it in is some club soda, or the other day I also had a little bit of chaga tea, and I put the white pine syrup in the bottom of that, and it was a really flavorful little concoction. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for learning a little bit about Mother Nature and the kinds of things that she has for us out there. And I will do this again sometime. All right. Thanks for watching.